Hello, in this video I will walk you through how to add a simple custom two-factor authentication feature to your WordPress website. If you don't know what 2FA or two-factor authentication is, it adds an extra layer of security by requiring users to enter a special code after they entered their username and password. We will send this code via email. This method helps protect against unauthorized access, even if someone knows your login details. So this is a very useful feature. This is not going to be a custom plugin because we won't need any custom settings on the administration side. So we will just add this code to our active themes functions.php file. But before we can start, we need to make sure that our WordPress website can send emails. For this, I'm going to install an SMTP plugin. I'm going to use this WP Mail SMTP. Let's click install now and let's click activate. Let's go to the dashboard. We don't need to add the license key because we are not going to use any pro features, but we will need to enter the SMTP settings. We will need to select the other SMTP option. And here we need to add a few information. Since this is just a test site and I am on localhost, I'm just going to use Mailtrap. This is an excellent free service to test email sending. If you don't have an account, you can sign up for free. I already have an account, so I'm just going to log in. And here under the integration tab, we have all the details that we need for our SMTP plugin. Let's copy the host, go back to WordPress. Let's paste it here. Let's select TLS. It automatically adds the correct port number, so we don't have to worry about that. We only need to add the username and password. Let's copy that. And we need to save the options. Let's go to Tools and let's send a test email. It was successful, and if we go back to Mailtrap, we have the test email here. Okay, so now the email sending is working. It doesn't matter what email address you use, everything will be delivered here. Okay, let's go back and let's open the WordPress site in a code editor. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, and I already have the website open. Let's go to WP Content Themes. I am using the Astra theme. You should choose your own active theme and search for the functions.php file. Let's open that file and let's go to the bottom, and this is where we are going to add our own code. Now let's start with the basic functionality. Because we are changing the default WordPress login process, we need to hook into the WordPress login system. So first we need to create a function. Let's call this custom WFA authentication. This will take 3 parameters. So this function hooks into the WordPress login process. When someone tries to log in, WordPress checks if the username and password are correct. We can do this by adding a conditional statement. So here we first check if there is an error, for example, incorrect username or password. If there is an error, we stop here and return the error. So this is the foundation for adding two-factor authentication, but first we must make sure that the login is successful before continuing. Okay, next I want to add a feature to only apply the two-factor authentication to users who have more control over the site, for example, administrators, editors, etc. To do that, we need to add a new if statement, and we need to check the user roles. Okay, so right now we are checking if the user who tries to log in is not an administrator and not an editor. So this piece of code checks the user role, and if they aren't an administrator or an editor, they can log in as usual without the extra 2FA options. But if they are administrator or editor, then they will need to use the two-factor authentication. Okay, so next we need to generate and send the two-factor authentication code. This will be the heart of the entire process. So now I'm just going to stop the video and type the code. I don't want this to take too long, and then we'll go through the code line by line. Okay, so this is the new code I added. So first, if no code has been submitted through the form, then we'll go on and do all these. So first, we generate a random code. It's going to be a random 6-digit code. Then we store this code for the user in the WordPress database using the update user meta function. This way, the code is temporarily linked to the user. We define the subject and the message for the email. In the email, we include the code that we generated. Then we send the email to the user using the WP mail function. To track which user is logging in, we store their user ID in a session. And then finally, we interrupt the normal login process by redirecting them to a special page where they need to enter the two-factor code. So first, we need to create this page. Okay, if you don't want to name this page 2FA verification, you can change this here. It doesn't really matter how you name that page. I just named it like this. So let's go to Pages, add a new page. The important thing is that the permalink needs to be the same as you have here. Okay, click Publish. You don't need to add any content here. You can if you want, but there is really no need. Okay, let's go back to our code. And after this, we need to return the user object, and this will allow the login process to continue. Okay, this is important because without this, the function would block users from logging in altogether. Returning the user object confirms that the login process can proceed either with or without the two-factor authentication, depending on the checks we've done here. Then we need to add a filter, and this add filter function is what connects our custom two-factor authentication function to the WordPress authentication process. The authenticate is the WordPress hook that handles the login attempts, and by adding the custom 2FA authentication function to this filter, we inject our code into the login process. That's how we can interact with the default WordPress processes. The 30 is the priority, meaning when during the login process our code will run. The default is 10, so 30 makes sure it runs a bit later in the process. 3 indicates that our function takes 3 parameters: the user, username, and the password. Okay, so the next step is to create the two-factor authentication code verification page. this is going to be a different function. Okay, so I added the new function that we will need. Let's see what it does. Okay, so we created this 2FA verification page. Now we need a way to generate the content for that page and check if the user provides the correct 2FA code. So we create a new function called handle 2FA verification. So basically this code listens for when the user visits the 2FA verification page. Okay, so this is important that this is the page's slug, and here these two should be the same. And then we display a simple form with a text field where users can type in their 2FA code. So in short, when the user submits the 2FA code, we check it against the one stored in the database. Okay, so here this is where we add the code temporarily to our database, and this is what we are checking here in this function. And if the code matches, we delete the saved code from the database and remove the session variable for security. After verifying the code, we log the user in manually using the WP set current user and the WP set auth cookie here. So this final step logs the user in and redirects them to the WordPress admin area. If the code doesn't match, we display an error message. So this line checks if the user has submitted the 2FA code via the form, and this code checks if the 2FA user ID is stored in the session. The session stores the user ID temporarily after they have entered their username and password, but before completing the 2FA. If the session variable exists, it means the user has already gone through the first step of the login, the username and password part. Here we retrieve the stored user ID from the session and assign it to the variable user ID. Then the get user meta retrieves the metadata associated with the user, in this case the 2FA code that was previously stored, and this line retrieves the code the user just entered in the form and stores it in the entered code variable. And we also do a little cleanup with the sanitize text field function. This will remove any unwanted characters or malicious code. Then we have another if-else statement. This one checks if the code the user entered, the entered code, matches the saved code. If they match, we know the user has successfully entered the correct 2FA code. After a successful match, we delete the stored 2FA code for the user. This also ensures that the code can't be reused in the future. This is a good security measure. And also, we don't have to store too much data in the database. With the onset function, we will remove the 2FA user ID from the session, since the 2FA process is now complete. And after this, the user will no longer need the session variable for 2FA. Then we already talked about these two lines. So with the WP set current user, we set the current user in WordPress, effectively logging them in. And it associates the session with the user ID provided, so WordPress knows which user is active. The WP set auth cookie sets the authentication cookie, which WordPress uses to remember the logged in user. It ensures the user remains logged in on subsequent page loads. This line will redirect the user to the admin URL, the admin dashboard. Then with the exit, we ensure that after the redirection, no further code is executed. And we also have an else part here. This will only be executed if the code the user entered is incorrect. Then the user will not be logged in, but an error message will be displayed. Okay, here we basically just create the form for the page. And then here we do a template redirect. Template redirect action is triggered when WordPress is ready to display the appropriate template for a page. By hooking into this, we ensure that our 2FA verification page shows up exactly when the user tries to access the specific URL, in our case, this URL. So this way we can override WordPress's normal behavior and display our custom 2FA form when needed. And then we need a small piece of code here. So we added this code because we need to use PHP sessions to track the user's login process. This simple function makes sure a session starts if it hasn't already. This will allow us to temporarily store the user's ID while they are in the middle of logging in. Okay, let's save the code and check if this is working or not. Okay, let's go back to the site. So we have the 2FA verification page. Let's log out. And let's try to log in. Okay, so far so good. We are redirected to the 2FA verification page. We need to check our email for the 2FA code. Okay, so the 2FA code has been sent. This is the code we need to use. Let's copy this code. Let's enter the code, click sign in. And then we are signed in to the WordPress admin dashboard. So far so good, it's working, but let's check if we are providing an incorrect code. So let's log out again. Let's log in. Okay, let's add something gibberish. Let's try to sign in. Okay, so we get the incorrect message. Okay, so this part of the code didn't work and we jumped to this part. Okay, this looks a bit minimalistic and we can make it look like a little bit more like a WordPress page. So let's add the header. We can do this by adding this code here. So the get header will display the header for us. Let's refresh the page. Okay, so now we have the WordPress header. Let's add the footer. We need to add the footer here. Click save, refresh. Now we have our footer. Okay, so you can style this any way you want. I will just show you a simple way to style this. So here under get header, we can add some CSS style and echo some divs. Okay, so we echo or add these two divs and heading. And we also echo some styles. Of course, you can move this to your own CSS file. You don't have to do it like this. Actually, this is a very primitive way to do it, but for this purpose, it will do. Also, we need to make sure that we close the divs, and we need to do that after the form. Click save, and if we refresh the page, now it will look something like this. Okay, if you have any questions, just please leave a comment below the video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching.